Election day, November 6th. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous weather here in southern Colorado. Just kind of scanning the western horizon, looking across the San Luis Valley with those mountains the better part of 50 miles away. Our visibility is probably upwards of 100 miles on this day, except the only thing in the sky are these trails. That one that's just right off the tree, with this huge gap, nothing, nothing, nothing. And then we have this left over from when it passed overhead. And so there's nothing in the sky except for these powders left over, these aerosols left over. And you can see this is a huge anomaly. Huge anomaly. And then the trail comes to a point. But as we get close, you can see the powders in here. You can see some of the wave action that's within this cloud. And then off to the end. So if they're out here dumping these powders this early, and you can see, if I can zoom back in off the horizon, I've got a few others. And then this one is coming right along. Probably going to skim the top of this plane, this older trail, if it isn't in front of it in the foreground, which kind of it appears that it is. And so otherwise we would have perfectly blue skies. But something they're crisscrossing the sky, hunting for, looking for. It looks like they might have found it right here. In mid-morning, over the San Luis Valley, moon setting in the west, all we've had, little trails. Little trail debris in the sky, and they just keep hammering it, one after the other after the other. They're trying to get something set up in here. We're going to have a little cross between these two planes, and it's happening right at the existence of a previous debris-filled field from a trail. And this is probably a southwest flight. These are very, very common. Kind of see that there. I can't really kind of make out the colors inside this, but there's our cross. Love these 90-degree angles. Love them, love them, love them, don't they? This other shorter, not quite as luminescent trail on the old line of the previous trail would be an old flight path. Whether it's natural or one of these program trails, we'll have to see. We're deep, deep into high pressure here in southern Colorado with this ridge extending through California, then out into the Pacific. So much of the southwestern U.S. is protected by high pressure. On the north and northwestern periphery, intense chemtrailing happening off the northern coast of California through Washington, Oregon, Idaho, northern Nevada, and probably into Wyoming and Montana as well. This particular plane we saw, and we have seen numerous ones come along over the course of the day, and these trails are not sublimating as if they were water vapor. Hit the end of this other crossbar right here. I mean, precisely, he ticked off this end. And to the west of that, an aspect of the trail continues to persist. Meanwhile, he trudges off to the east, leaving a larger trail. I've got a plane that's just now cruising overhead. And so he's probably interested in something that this other plane has been off investigating. And that's simply what these trails are, leaving markers to investigate something in the atmosphere. Got a nice little, looks like a red underbelly towards the back of the tail. And then blue engines. I'm not familiar with that paint scheme, but nevertheless, whatever airline that represents has been corrupted by the powers that be to grab their paint scheme and act as stand-ins. This is not a vapor trail, certainly not so on this day. And so what I'm anticipating is that this plane will cross this lower trail at the precise time that this lower trail fades from view, at least in the visible spectrum. It may persist longer through other spectrums, other visibilities, but I've seen this often, where this second trail comes along and investigates or marks off precisely just how long, just how persistent this trail lingers. And that gives them some value, some data. And it looks like it's going to be a little longer than that. And then there's, no, it's not quite. This trail should be lasting a little bit longer if that were the case. At least with the other very clean experiences or examples of this that I've seen. He's headed off to the southeast, but something is still happening here. Why would these particulates, if they were vapor, be persisting for this length of time? Water vapor cannot answer that. It's almost as if where this guy crossed this longer trail, this trail is still persisting longer than it had back off to the west. North, you see this very persistent trail. That one was meant to stick around with the powders, the aerosols weeping out from underneath. And then farther to the north we have other smaller trails, not quite of such an intense duration, but some wave, something heading over these mountains requires them to lay out these angled lines. These angled lines, because these are straighter than some I've seen. I've seen some of these trails angled like this, some like this. And then that can push, if they're pulsing along the angle, boom, 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 then they're shoving the jet stream quicker, the airflow quicker, more quickly over the mountaintops. I've also seen it the other way, where the clouds are moving this way, and then rippling sets up this way, and actually progresses against the flow of the wind. And in doing so, you pile up air, you pile up moisture, you create a zone of resistance, and then we begin to get the lenticulars forming across the mountaintops. Plane after plane just keeps hitting these skies. And then we have this low-flying UPS one that for some reason is not. And so we have this issue with some of the planes leaving these very persistent trails, even in this incredibly dry atmosphere, and little planes like this, one overhead. Part of the trail that I'm seeing today, part of these planes, trails always persist. There's always a little segment of it that persists. And then what happens is that little segment that lasts, let me see what this is doing. Get stable here. Can't really make out any names. Part of the trail that lasts is then investigated by another plane, like this one here. Come along, and then there's just this little faint segment that just hasn't quite faded away. And then as we go to the horizon, any horizon, north in particular right now, these little bits of trails that are lasting are getting marked off by planes coming on the diagonal. And I'm so close to the mountains that I can't see the whole rest of the trail, so I can't see the context. There's another pup. Getting difficult to make out any markings on this guy. Very difficult. But he is leaving one of these persistent trails. We saw that UPS flight that was not. So there's your difference. There should not be any trails on this date. Back in between the trees here, there's this. Something there is persisting. And that would be a spot worthy of investigation. Up in here, here's a bit of a smear, a mark left by trail worthy of investigation. This is the flight we're just looking at. Push way on in, and it's just one of these sticky trails. It's not falling apart, it's not sublimating. It's hanging in there, it's hanging in there, it's hanging in there. It's sticking. And as we look back, you can see the powders, the aerosols coming off the top. So we're in some vertical velocity, that's some upward momentum. And this trail is supposed to stick. This plains trail is sticking. Absolutely it's sticking. And then there's this cloud right in here. And I'm seeing another plane come up from the northwest. And so they're going to intersect, once again, at a 90-degree angle. We're putting in these trails at a perpendicular angle. So this trail is fading here. The rest of this segment is largely persisting. We're beginning to see a twist as the powders, the aerosols are kind of curtaining downward. Gotta get out of the road. But then here's our intersecting flight. Who's above which? Again, another 90-degree flight. Don't tell me these are commercial flights. You know, you can get these airline pilots all their panties all in a wad that it isn't them doing it. And it isn't them doing these flights. These flights are wholly concerned about atmospheric anomalies that they're investigating. It has nothing to do with passengers to get to destination. There's a spot here. There's a spot here that they were interested in. And hence, I mean, they pretty much X'd it right out. That was a perfect cross. And then we still have an aspect of this trail that persists even two and a half minutes after it was laid down. We've got a nice fold inward here, and it kind of just augurs or just plays this curtaining effect, and then the trail fades away completely, and then the other plane is headed off to the south, likely to intersect this other one that's just come across the mountains. And so they'll do a little dance. They'll do another little cross in the sky in about a minute. So this is the shape of that trail, and it looks like it's just kind of coming over the top of or cresting a waveform. The powder's drifting off the edge onto the right side, the left side. Don't tell me that's just a vapor trail. I'm not stupid. Most of us aren't stupid anymore. We know there's more than that to this. Look to the south. This one's come along, and this one just crossed through an aspect of this previous trail, but it's just now fading. It's just now faded from view, and so I wasn't able to catch that for you. And then down below, we've got other planes on the horizon. So underneath this high pressure, they're working. And now I'm hearing a plane. Ah, there it is. Up this way. There it is. So he's off to destination, or he's either shuttling low to get in place to go to work, or he is working with something on board that isn't chemtrail. A lot of these planes are just energy planes, cutting the ether or stirring the orgone energy. And they don't have to be land-based platforms like HARP. I think HARP is such a bit player in all of this. Way too much attention has been given to HARP. And there's that aspect of a trail. Something there that needed to be illuminated. And that's what this chemtrail is doing. It's making the invisible visible. From this bit of a formation, on this side of the trail, these grid lines, these waves, have just now begun to manifest. And so that's what I keep talking about is when they lay out these trails and when they become marking, when they become persisting, there is an energetic difference from one side of the trail to the other side. And it's just a matter of waiting to see how the clouds or how the atmosphere will respond to whatever they've just done. And in this particular case, it's gone from a few wispy little clouds like this to a structure, a waveform of rather short frequency. But there's the answer to what they were looking at. Patience, and it will reveal itself if you just pay attention. I step inside for just a moment, and then I have this next trail come along across the sky, just to the diagonal of this formation that's showing up atop the tree here, this rippling, and it's growing a little more pronounced. So they're aware of it, they're watching it, and with the particulate matter that's in the sky, then they can keep tabs on it. There, we've got a little mark that comes right in through here, right in through that gap. Back out and see if that helps see it. You can kind of see it flare through there, then it comes through this opening, and that, in fact, right where this trail fails, right here, is where it persists on through. And so this trail helped them to find that edge. And then this is a target of interest, a point of interest. I can't even go inside for just a minute. This plane had one come up overhead. It's now departing to the south and east. And then we get over the top of the roof. Another one that just showed up there. This guy looks like he's going to go right through this formation that continues to show enhancement. So let's just follow this little plane through it. And I'm guessing, it's really tough to make out who it is. It's absolutely 737. But rather than UPS or FedEx or one of the commercial planes, it's tough to see. But there's the context. And this field, this shield of clouds continues to get a little more intense. More and more definition showing up. We'll see if the trail persists there. But it's these, there it is up there. They're kind of giving us an idea that once the trail's laid out, that the powder's being pushed this way. They're attached to some resonance, some wind, because they're not necessarily flying with the wind, but something is holding them there. And then straight overhead, I've got another one. So they're actually creating this this little wedge, this little edge of a square, in which this cloud is part of. Hard to believe this has been kept secret for so long. Utterly, utterly unbelievable. West, all these little standing segments of trails. Little bits here, little bits there. All with some kind of significance. Either meteorologically, energetically, something. They're all maintaining some kind of significance because the trails are persisting. So they're illuminating some phenomenon in the atmosphere that is of interest to those pulling off the program. Every bit of 35-40 minutes later, and this streak in the sky continues. The ripples have gotten, well, they're a little more separated here than they are here. There's a slightly different frequency between the ripplings. But of course the trails are aware of it. And we had this one kind of just thread its way through it, with part of the trail not persisting. So it's just like they're just kind of just weaving through, threading through a cloth is what this particular trail has done. And I just heard a plane overhead, and it's not this one that I got, but nevertheless, they're there and still working on this. The powders, the aerosols, being pulled off to the north, whether it's magnetic, whether it's resonance, because I don't believe they're flying so much with the wind. They seem to be attached to another energy, because I've seen trail after trail where one will simply move right across another, like they're attached to a different frequency. But this is what we've got going here. Another plane up here, and then another set of ripplings happening here. So this is this cloud cover is becoming just a touch bit more widespread. And this looks like a little business jet. Yep, one of those expensive guys, like net jets. Well, wouldn't be net jets because this would be a very specific operation and target. But in here, look at these eyes. All those two holes and all the turbulence that comes from them. It comes from these holes. Look at this. Okay, turn it off and see where this plane's headed inside. Headed into this, maybe this guy will leave a bit of a mark in there. So this the little plane went right through those kind of two holes that have now kind of morphed into one. But that was the target. Now there's a second plane coming along. Probably going to hit right in there on the outside. Something's up. Let's go to the horizon. Into the sun. We can see all this on the horizon. See how these powders, how these aerosols being pulled down below. It's descending air. Something's pulling them down. And that quits. You can see exactly where it quits. And then the trail actually has a little bit of an upward bias right here. And then the trail fades. So this is data. how the trails to form. It's the purpose for the whole bloody program. There's our sun. We're just almost on the mountains. We're almost at sunset. It's the far northern extent of this formation of rippling. See the other plane that went through that spot back here. See if we can't see if he's above or below it. More than likely he's pretty much right through it. But I'm not seeing any shadow, so he may be underneath it. That's what I'm kind of anticipating, is that he's just a touch under it. But he's up there observing it. Absolutely observing it. There's the whole shape. Right there. Off the horizon, this guy came and clipped the end of this trail. Once he's past it, notice how the trail is now sticking. Now it's sticking. So we're creating some geometry. It's important right here. Another plane. There's those two trails. There's this guy coming along. He went through. Got another one from the east. So despite what is a beautiful, clear blue day and shouldn't have any clouds, they're really, really interested. Really interested in what's happening here. All this is intense. This is intense. And this is all while all that operation is going on in Kansas and the southeast, plus the intense activity across the northwestern states. The number of planes that these yahoos have got deployed to this operation is utterly insane. Just insane. I don't know what it's going to take to get it to stop, but it isn't going to happen until everybody's a bit aware of what's going on. Because if the awareness stays at the levels that it was in the 90s and the early part of the last decade, nothing's going to change. Nothing will change. So people have to see. How many planes do we see in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that what I see through this viewfinder? 6 planes? That's just this little point of view. Let's scan over a little bit more. I think we see a few more here. 1, 2, that might be just a trail. That might be a trail. And then some more action going on down here. So it's just a bit intense up there in the skies. And it'd be nice, this being election day, if we were to get some transparency. Some true transparency. That would be such a gift. Good afternoon, everybody. Coming up on Tuesday, 6 November, we're late afternoon Mountain Time, and I want to start out in the Northwest, because across this continent, and especially right now, this is where so much of our weather is happening, and it is cold. We're sub-zero and teens sub-zero as we move into interior Alaska, somewhat warmer through the Yukon, Northwest Territories, but nonetheless, this is the potent cold that is in place up there. Weak cool front moving through the Pacific Northwest with the jet stream arcing over the Pacific Northwest, and in doing so we're littered with trails. We'll see them on visible and water vapor imagery here shortly. Cool front with north winds plunging southbound from the Dakotas, where temperatures at mid-afternoon just in the mid-40s. Behind the front we've got low 70s as we move on into Texas, and then behind the front with that northerly northwesterly breeze, 50s in Nebraska. The eastern states are kind of where the more inclement weather is. There is low off the southeast coast of the Carolinas. This is the nor'easter we kind of hinted at late last week, and we've been watching it through the weekend, and it continues to amplify as the primary energy for it still resides with this storm across lower Missouri and into northern Arkansas. This will merge with this storm off the Carolinas, and then we have the next stage in our nor'easter. Well, let's start with the eastern states, and we had a stripe of clouds across Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri, and you can see the chemtrails earlier this morning across Kansas. They were thick. This is all freaky-ass clouds. These are just freaky across Missouri. I don't know. I know Brian Busby in Kansas City. I'm waiting for him to pull his head out and maybe address a bit of this issue. Across the Carolinas, look at these pulses, look at these holes, and the sharp angles, these nested pie shapes coming out of these holes across southern Virginia and into North Carolina. This was late morning North Carolina time, and we'll back on out, and you can see this is the beginnings of this nor'easter. It is, again, like all weather now, it is wholly manufactured, and so we're struggling with this. Now we've lost the sunlight now, because where I am, we're closing in on sunset in the western states. In the east, it is much darker. All right, here's all the trails. You can see them across Grants Pass, all the way through Oregon, John Day, Baker, in through Moscow, Lewiston, Idaho, across the Treasure State through Montana, and the entirety of northern Idaho and Washington. Just absolutely hammered today, and it is all in advance of this storm, of this cold front, as it presses inland. I'm here in southern Colorado. It looks blue, it looks gorgeous, and yes, the skies are that way, but as you have seen in the video, we're still dealing with these stripes of clouds. They are still out there. Here's the high pressure, about a 588 center across the Nevada-California border, with a nice ridge arcing through the spine of the Canadian Rockies. There's the cold air and the cold over Alaska. And here's the developing nor'easter. It's going to come in two parts, this part and the second part. And they'll begin to merge as we get towards tomorrow morning. The ridge out west collapses, at least across the Pacific Northwest states, kind of gets angled in across the Dakotas through the Four Corners area. But it is this storm. It is not nearly as tight and compact as Sandy was, but it is just, it is slowing down, and there's multiple pieces of energy coming into this. And we'll go to the surface map and watch the track of the surface low here shortly. It looks like it's going to be just off the coast, but the cold that may draw the snow level down to maybe 500 to 1,500 feet along the coast from the Mason-Dixon line northbound to the coast of Maine. Out west, fall is going to turn into late fall or almost early-like weather, as this cold air we've seen in Alaska gets driven deep into California. Beautiful weather as we get into Saturday morning begins to translate into the eastern states. Meanwhile, the west turns sharply colder. The ridge in the east as we get to Sunday morning remains intact and will retard the movement of this storm across the Great Plains states and the southwestern states. This is going to be kind of compressed, so we'll have some very strong southerly winds out ahead of this cold front. And you can see even in the next 24 hours, so I'd expect to see some training showers, but a very slow advancing movement of this particular cold front. All right, let's go to the surface pressure map, and we can see the beautiful weather out west. This darker line highlighted by the 540 line, that is our rough estimate on the rain snow line. We would have a low pressure here and a high pressure here. Low pressure off of the Canadian Maritimes, and a low pressure off of and south of Anchorage. We're going to see our low develop over the Canadian prairies, making the pop across those Alberta Rockies, with the cold front arcing down in here. And then here is the distant cousin of Sandy. And you can see that snow line pulled all the way down to the beaches of North Carolina, down to Hatteras. And then the cold air gets entrained as this thing winds up. It has nowhere near as deep as Sandy. There will be winds, there will be strong onshore flow, but this is going to be a much colder event. And I trust that by Wednesday night and through Thursday and Friday, that there will be many more locations with power on. Otherwise, it's going to be an issue with cold houses up here. So this is, you're going to need shelter. You're going to need shelter for those. Out west, an Arctic high begins to settle in from northern Canada, with the cold air kind of draped it right in through here, which is about where we draw the front. And that is Friday morning. By Saturday morning, the low pops out east of Greeley, Colorado, with the warm front to about Chicago, north of Des Moines. Strong, beautiful, gorgeous late fall weather. Will pull up some beautiful weather into the middle part of the nation. Meanwhile, the west turns divided, much colder. So beautiful weather in the east, with a high pressure just giving us some gorgeous weather. We'll probably see a lot of trails out ahead of this as we move through the weekend. So west of the Appalachians and all the way to the middle of the nation, laden with chemtrails as this storm becomes a rather slow mover. All right, I want to do the satellite imagery, and we can see these stripes in through here. All of this is chemtrail clouds. All of these are trails. that have been laid in place over the course of the day, creating this canopy of clouds, which then grab the moisture, and so it shows up as we look into the water vapor imagery. And this is the chemtrails, and so they love to work high pressure here and low pressure in the storm here. They love to work the edges of the high pressure. That is their beautiful, most favorite place to go. We go from here so you can see where the trails are. Come back to the GFS, Global Forecast System. Come back to here, and here's the high pressure. So in here is where we're seeing the trails today. They love to work the high pressures. I'm going to say that time and time and time again. They love to work the high pressures. Visible imagery, let's go up just off to the north, go to visible, and see if we can't see some of these trails in here. You can see them as we begin to load this animation, just crossing the sky. So we've lost the blue sky. They've kind of turned to that white, hazy, milky crap that we all have to deal with across the Pacific Northwest. So the weak, distant cousin of Sandy is moving up the coast, and we'll look outside here and see how we are doing in southern Colorado. All the best, guys. And here's sunset over this beautiful San Luis Valley. The mountains and the San Juan's off to our west, and of course all this cloud action that we've got going overhead, and then right along the horizon. So that's a beautiful end to a day where we had every bit of 120 miles visibility. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous day. Underneath high pressure, nevertheless, we still had these sticking chemtrails. They stuck and they stuck and they stuck. Maybe tomorrow they won't be quite as intense. Thanks for watching, everybody.